I spent my whole life afraid of surgery, and that's exactly why I had to go through this. Hey guys, welcome back to the forest. My name is Jess. Today we're telling a personal story and talking about how it's so easy to manifest what you do not want. I wish this was a story I didn't have available to tell, and I promise I'm going to tie it in and explain to you how I actually manifested this for myself, but I have to give you a little bit of context and explain what happened first. So I was super excited when I found out I was having my first child, but my body was not. My mom had both my sister and I unmedicated, and I always loved the thought of doing that. There's something really intriguing to me about feeling the human experience in its entirety. And so I really wanted to have my children unmedicated just to know, what it felt like physically to bring life into the world. But the first domino that fell was I had gestational diabetes. And luckily I didn't have to get on insulin or anything, but I was pricking my finger multiple times a day, which sucks. And then one day I felt this little itch on my hand, like the palm of my hand, which is bizarre. And it spread to like in between my fingers, and then like my entire body was itchy, and I was at work like feeling like a freaking like I was going through withdrawal of like a drug or something. And so after I got my medical PhD from Google, I asked my doctor if he would test me for cholestasis, which is an issue where your liver basically isn't processing bile correctly, and so it's excreting it through your veins, through your skin, which makes you just itch everywhere without like a visible rash. And I had already received a warning from the doctor after the gestational diabetes that C-section is a possibility, but with this diagnosis, they told me again, like the warning of C-section is probably likely because it raises your chances of stillbirth if you have cholestasis. The longer the baby's in there, the more dangerous it is. So at this point, I was feeling anxious, and I did all the things that I could think of to make sure that I had the birth I wanted. I really do believe the law of attraction, and so I was listening to positive birth stories and listening to books, and I made a playlist for labor and delivery. I did everything mentally, like setting myself for like a mental prep for what I wanted as much as I could. But as far as my actual internal beliefs, I can't say that I truly addressed and eliminated my fear of medical intervention. It was more like I was laying a pretty blanket over the fear and hoping that it would just like dissolve underneath. So on the last day of week 35, my water broke early, and I went off to the hospital. They said, yeah, you better come. And that night, they checked my cervix, which was 0% cooperative. And so they started me on Pitocin. For anyone who doesn't have kids, Pitocin is basically like an artificial hormone that's supposed to kickstart the labor process. And so I'm on Pitocin, nothing's really happening. And all through the night, the nurses keep coming in and they're having to adjust my little monitors on my belly to track my son's heart rate, and he was not cooperating, and he kept moving around. They couldn't keep track of his heart rate, which is what concerned them because Pitocin can cause fetal distress. So by noon the next day, they check my cervix again. They say it's maybe 2 centimeters dilated, which is nothing when you need to get a whole baby out. So they were still struggling to get his heart rate to track on the monitor, so they ended up calling the doctor. And next thing you know, they're in my room, they are pulling up my gown, they're shaving me, and telling me that I have to decide who's coming with me into the operating room. So I was having a C-section. And this was counted as an emergency C-section. So at this point, I literally break down, I'm bawling, like seriously, look at this photo. My worst fear was playing out right in front of my eyes, and it was the exact thing that I'd been worrying about underneath all of my like artificial top layer attempts to be positive and think about the outcome that I wanted that was not this. But the lesson that came with this manifestation would prove valuable and change the way that I handle fear. So my husband was queasy and I was like a terrified little girl inside. So my mom joined me in the surgery room, but she couldn't come in until the surgery was actually about to begin. So I said bye to my husband and my mom through my tears. and they rolled me down the hallway, and I just wondered, like, how long is this going to take? Is it going to hurt? Am I going to feel anything? If the anesthesia would work. Shaking out of fear, like total fear of the unknown. And the doctor comes running down the hallway. They wheel me into the operating room and guide me to sit on the operating table. And then they start telling me about the spinal tap I'm about to receive. And the room was absolutely freezing. If you've ever had surgery where you're conscious, you'll know, like, it's very cold in there to help keep things sterile, I guess. So they told me to lean forward, curve my back, tuck my head in so that they can get in between my vertebrae and into the spinal column. And I'm like literally freaking out. I can't stay still and I feel like I can't breathe. And I'm still shaking like crazy because I'm terrified and I'm freezing. So the sensation of being paralyzed was like almost as bad as like the pain of the needle, which was really, really bad. And like, it was just unsettling to feel like they are putting something into my back, and I was feeling like little zaps of like sensation and like nerve tingling in like other parts of my body, and it's just bizarre. So when they were done with that, they laid me down on the operating table and they manipulated my body to the optimal position for them to cut through these 5 layers of flesh and pull my baby out. They were moving my legs around, they inserted the catheter, and like I could feel the pressure of it. It didn't hurt, but it was just so like mentally uncomfortable. And as I was going numb, it was kind of like every time they touched my skin, it felt like a ripple of prickles, little pins or needles or pricks coming out from wherever they touched until, I just didn't really feel anything anymore. And it was really ironic to me that not only did my worst fear manifest, but it manifested in a way where I was going to be fully conscious through a surgery and able to remember all of the details. So finally, my mom was in the room. She was talking to me. The anesthesiologist was talking to me. The nurses were talking to me. But the doctor was very focused. He was not talking to me. He literally got my baby out within like 5 minutes of the first cut. And then I was in the room for another hour being put back together, which my mom was not there for. I was on my own. And, it was everything I was afraid of. And it was just a strange experience. Like, I could smell the burning from the cauterizer. I could hear the tools and like feel certain pressures, and it was everything that I didn't want to experience. I could spend hours talking about how magical it was to meet my son that day, and that outweighs this whole negative experience times 1,000, but that's not the point of this video, so I'm going to skip over that. The important thing about this is that I manifested this situation even though I did not want it. I had never had surgery. I had never broken a bone. I'd never had stitches. I was always clumsy, but never enough to actually have to have medical intervention. And so I was afraid of surgery my whole life. It just feels really unsettling to me, like to manipulate the body medically. I know that it's beneficial. I'm grateful for it. I'm extremely grateful that my son and I got out of that hospital room happy and healthy. But I really can't help how eerie it feels to mess with the natural order of things. And so how this was manifested is, when I got pregnant, I was feeling good. And then I got diagnosed with gestational diabetes, and then I was not feeling as good. The C word, as in C-section, started getting thrown around. And all I could really do was try to stay positive and continue to visualize my preferred outcome. But underneath, I was still absolutely terrified because this long time fear was facing me. I had to get this baby out one way or another. If I had broken arm and the doctor said, well, you can have surgery or you can deal with this arm that is going to be in pain for the rest of your life, I would have the option at least to just feel the pain for the rest of my life. There wouldn't be a moment where I am 100% forced to get that surgery. I would be in control. But in this case, I didn't have any choice at all. I had to get the baby out. You don't just get to opt out of that one. And fear is a very powerful thing. It can engulf us so easily. And even if it wasn't at the top of my mind throughout my entire pregnancy, it was the underlying tone, the underlying fear. There was a constant concern for that being the outcome. And I knew deep down that I was bringing that closer to me by being worried about it, but I couldn't shake it. It was just deeply ingrained. The idea that I would not be safe in a surgery or just the fear of losing control. And so I want you to shift your perception of fear. It shouldn't be seen as a negative thing. It should be taken as like a cue or an awareness of what beliefs you're carrying that are secretly running the show. Your fears aren't the stage performers. That's more like your ego and your outward personality. Your fears are more like the stage manager or the lighting guy or the director, because fears are beliefs themselves. And you do have the power to change them with intention and time, but I was lacking both of those. I did not have much time. That's limited. I had a deadline for this baby to come out, and as I was really struggling to get my mind in the right headspace because of the impending doom type of feeling, with that deadline. And so since I knew all of this deep down, when they came in and told me that I was having that C-section, I really wasn't surprised. Only like the surface level of me actually had any hope left at that point. It's like I knew what my energy was bringing to me this whole time, and I knew that I was really just pushing against it, providing resistance, rather than inviting in the outcome that I wanted. But I still hadn't allowed myself to mentally prepare for a surgery because it wasn't the outcome I wanted, and I wasn't willing to give up 100% of my hope. So when they did come in, it still took me by, not by surprise, but it still shocked me, and it still threw me into that fear. And so this is how you manifest what you don't want. People get really upset when the law of attraction implies that everything is your fault. Well, this is the story that explains it. I didn't want a C-section, and it's not like I actively chose to have gestational diabetes. I worked on my feet every single day until my son was born, and I ate as best as I could. I didn't choose to have cholestasis. From where it came, none of the doctors even knew, because nobody in my family had it, and that's usually how you get it. And I didn't ask for a C-section. It wasn't my fault, but I did have a fear that had very powerful emotions attached to it. And it'd been around forever, and finally it was kicked into overdrive while I was on a one-way road. The stage manager and director were running the show. I do believe with enough intent and time, I could have overcome the fear and seen a very different outcome, possibly. The mind really is a powerful thing, and some fears can take a long time to process. Some can be a quick epiphany. For me, this one needed way more time than I had. So when something bad happens to you, I implore you to not say, "Oh, why? Poor me," or I have no control, or "I'm the victim here." Yes, there is legitimacy to things being outside of your control, but the mindset of that is not beneficial to you. So what I would suggest you do instead is to not shame yourself, not feel bad for yourself, but to understand yourself more deeply through these negative experiences. What powerful feelings have you been experiencing? Or what powerful feelings have you been trying to suppress or ignore? And are they related to what's happening to you in your life? And do you need to address them? It's not about blame or punishment. It's more about awareness and reclaiming your power, because what we focus on, especially with powerful emotions, good or bad, tends to show up in our lives. And that's why it's important to face and process your fears lovingly. Having to face my fear without my choice, it really laid in the law of attraction and really spoke to how the law of attraction functions and how important it is to accept and address negativity, fears, and every part of the human experience, which is why I'm so big about accepting that bad things happen. You feel bad exists, and you have to learn to process those things, work through them so that you can get more good out of life. It's totally normal, totally human to have negative beliefs, limiting beliefs, negative thoughts, but the mind is amazing, and luckily we all have one, and we all have the power to rewire literal neural pathways in our brains and thought patterns and thought behaviors. So you always have something you can do. You may not be in control of everything that comes to you, or it feels like you're not in control of everything that comes to you, but the way that you perceive it, take it and use it and change yourself with it, that does impact your future and what you are getting out of your future. So I hope this story helps. I hope it gave you a little bit of insight to how you get things you don't want, so that hopefully you don't have to manifest your worst fear coming into your real life. And for the sake of it, just so it's out there, this is not medical advice. This is just my personal experience and my meaning making out of it. That's the video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked the video, please like the video. And if you would like to find your way back to the forest, make sure you subscribe. And I would love to hear your opinions in the comments, especially if you just realized from this story how you might have manifested something you didn't want, like being overly anxious about your partner doing something and then you find out they did it, or being overly concerned that your boss was going to think something about this or that, and then turns out that's exactly what happened. Kind of like Murphy's Law scenarios. I would love to hear about your experiences in the comments. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.